her and lost everything in one night. The elegant stranger left her a gold coin, but it wasn't a tip. It was a mark that bound her to the vampire king, and now every creature in the darkness knows exactly where she is. The fluorescent lights of Blood Oath Cafe buzzed like angry wasps at 2:47 a.m. Mara wiped down table 6 for the third time, her lower back screaming in protest. 12 hours into her shift, and the only customers left were the usual insomniacs nursing cold coffee and stale regrets. She didn't notice him enter. One moment the cafe was empty except for old Danny, snoring in booth 3. The next, a man sat at the corner table by the window, the one nobody ever chose because the streetlight outside had been broken for months. Mara's breath caught. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent, perfectly tailored to his tall frame. His hair was dark, swept back like old Hollywood stars used to wear it. But it was his eyes that made her hands tremble slightly as she approached, pale gray, almost silver, watching her with an intensity that felt ancient. "Good evening," his voice was smooth, formal, like he'd learned English from century-old books. "Might I trouble you for tea?" It's almost 3 in the morning. Mara stammered, then mentally kicked herself. Rule 1. Never question what customers order.
She needed this job.
I mean, yes, of course. What kind? Whatever you have will suffice, he smiled, but it didn't quite reach those unsettling eyes. I'm not particular. Mara hurried to the kitchen, her pulse racing for reasons she couldn't name. Something about him felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but displaced. Like he'd stepped out of a painting and into her dingy cafe. When she returned with the Earl Grey, the only decent tea they had, he was examining the cafe with an expression she couldn't read. Curiosity? Nostalgia. Here you go. She set the cup down carefully. Can I get you anything else? We have pie, but I'll be honest, it's been sitting there since Tuesday. He looked up at her, and for a moment, she felt pinned by that gaze. Your honesty is refreshing. No pie, thank you. Just the tea. Mara nodded and retreated to the counter, pretending to organize the napkin holders while stealing glances at him. He lifted the cup once, inhaled deeply, but never drank. Just held it between pale hands like he was warming himself, though the cafe was stifling. 20 minutes passed in strange silence. Old Danny woke up, paid, and shuffled out. The stranger remained motionless, steam rising from his untouched tea. Finally, he stood. Mara straightened, reaching for her order pad to calculate his bill. Please, he raised one hand. Allow me. He placed something on the table. Not cash, but a single coin. Heavy. Gold. When Mara picked it up, the weight surprised her. It was warm, as if it had been pressed against skin. Engraved on its surface was an elaborate crest, a crown wrapped in thorns, with 2 fangs crossed beneath it. Sir, I can't. This looks like, RT is only $250. Keep it. He moved toward the door with fluid grace. You've been kind. That's rarer than you might think. Wait. Mara called out. What's your name? He paused at the threshold, half-turned. The broken streetlight outside suddenly flickered to life, casting him in stark relief. For just a second, his eyes seemed to glow. Aldrich, he said it like a secret. And yours? Mara. Mara, he repeated her name slowly, tasting each syllable. A pleasure. I suspect we'll meet again. Then he was gone, dissolving into the pre-dawn darkness, so completely that Mara wondered if she'd imagined him. She looked down at the coin, turning it over in her palm. The engravings were impossibly detailed. She could make out individual thorns, the serrated edges of the fangs. What kind of currency was this? She'd never seen anything like it. The bell above the door chimed violently. Marcus, the cafe owner, burst in an hour early for his shift. His face was flushed, eyes wild. Where is he? Where did he go? Who? Mara asked, confused. Don't play stupid. Marcus grabbed her wrist, his grip painful. His eyes dropped to her hand, to the coin. All color drained from his face. Oh God, no. You took it. You actually took it. Marcus, you're hurting me. He released her like she'd burned him, stumbling backward. Do you know what that is? Do you have any idea what you've done? Mara looked at the coin, then back at Marcus. She'd worked for him for 3 years and had never seen him scared. Angry, yes. Cheap, definitely. But not terrified. It's just a coin. A weird coin, sure, but… That's the mark of the vampire royals, Marcus's voice shook. That symbol, the crown and fangs that belongs to them. The old bloodlines. The ones who made the treaties. Anyone who carries that becomes, he swallowed hard. You need to leave.
Now. What?
Marcus, I don't understand. You're fired. He was already pulling out his phone, dialing with trembling fingers. Take your things and leave town. Before nightfall. That's not a suggestion, Mara. It's the only way you survive this. You're firing me? For what?
Accepting a tip.
For drawing their attention. Marcus shouted, and old Danny's coffee cup was still there, now cold. They don't give those coins to humans. Ever. It means something. It means you're marked. And when word spreads, and it will spread, everything that opposes them will come for you. Mara felt the cafe tilt sideways. Vampires. He was talking about vampires like they were real. Like the pale stranger with the too formal speech and the untouched tea was.
No.
That was insane. Marcus, have you been drinking? I wish I had, he pointed to the door.
Go. Now.
Don't go home, they might already be watching. Take the coin, take whatever cash you have, and run. Mara stood frozen, the gold coin burning warm against her palm. Part of her wanted to laugh. Vampires weren't real. This was some kind of elaborate prank. But Marcus's fear was real. And now that she thought about it, the stranger, Aldrich, had never drunk his tea. His skin had been impossibly pale. Those eyes had almost glowed. The coin suddenly felt heavier. Go! Marcus screamed. Mara grabbed her jacket and ran into the morning light, the coin clutched in her fist, her mind spinning with one impossible thought. What have I gotten myself into? Mara's apartment was a 4th-floor walk-up in the kind of building where the elevator had been broken since the Nixon administration. Her legs burned as she climbed the stairs, Marcus's words echoing in her skull like a death sentence. Vampire royals. Marked. They'll come for you. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. She fumbled with her keys, dropped them twice before getting the door open. Inside, her studio apartment looked exactly as she'd left it 14 hours ago. Unmade bed, dishes in the sink, her cat Mr. Whiskers glaring at her from the windowsill for being late with breakfast. Normal. Everything was devastatingly normal. Mara fed the cat, then collapsed on her bed, pulling the gold coin from her pocket. In the morning light streaming through her window, it looked even more elaborate. The craftsmanship was museum quality. The gold was real. She was sure of it now. This single coin could probably pay her rent for 6 months. Her phone buzzed. A text from her roommate Nicole, who worked night shifts at the hospital. You okay? Marcus called me. Said you quit? What happened? Mara stared at the message. Marcus had said fired, not quit. He was already rewriting the story. She typed back. Long story.
I'm fine.
Talk later. The reply came instantly. He sounded scared. Really scared. Said to tell you to leave the city. Mara, what's going on? Before she could respond, someone knocked on her door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Mara's heart lurched into her throat. She crept to the peephole, the coin gripped so tightly in her fist that the edges cut into her palm. Nothing. The hallway was empty. She waited 30 seconds, barely breathing. Probably just Mrs. Chin from 4C, who sometimes knocked on the wrong door when she forgot her glasses. Mara turned away from the door and saw the envelope. It lay on her floor, just inside the threshold, as if it had been slipped under the door. Except that was impossible. She'd been standing right here. She would have seen it. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Heavy paper, cream-colored, sealed with red wax. Pressed into the wax was the same symbol from the coin, crown and fangs.
No.
This wasn't happening. She broke the seal. Inside was a single card, written in perfect calligraphy. Miss Mara, please accept my sincerest apologies for the disturbance I have caused. The coin was meant as gratitude, not burden. I failed to consider the consequences of my carelessness. What's done cannot easily be undone, but I would like to explain in person. Tonight, at sunset, I will wait at the corner of 5th and Morrison. You need not come if you prefer not to. But know that whether you meet me or not, you are now under protection. That protection comes with a price you did not agree to pay. I am sorry.
A.
Mara read it 3 times. The handwriting was old-fashioned, each letter perfectly formed. The kind of penmanship nobody used anymore. Under protection. What did that mean? She grabbed her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Vampire royal symbols, crown and fangs crest, blood oath cafe vampires. Most results were fantasy novels and role-playing games. But buried on page 7 of her search was a scanned image from what looked like a very old book. The same symbol. Underneath, text in Latin that Google translated roughly as, the mark of the first council. To bear this seal is to claim sanctuary in the court of night. To harm the bearer is to declare war upon the ancient bloodlines. Mara slammed the laptop shut. This was insane. Vampires weren't real. They were stories.
Myths.
Hollywood monsters. But Marcus had recognized the coin instantly. And now there was a letter, delivered impossibly, inviting her to a meeting at sunset, because of course it had to be sunset. Her phone rang, making her jump. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then, thinking it might be Marcus calling from the cafe, she picked up. Mara? A woman's voice, sharp and urgent. Listen carefully. My name is Detective Sarah Chen. I'm with the Special Crimes Unit. We need you to come to the station immediately. Special crimes? I haven't done anything. This isn't about you committing a crime. It's about your safety, the detective's voice lowered. You were seen accepting a gold coin from an unidentified man at Blood Oath Cafe. That coin is. It's evidence in several ongoing investigations. Very dangerous investigations. Mara's mouth went dry. What kind of investigations? The kind I can't discuss over the phone. But if you have the coin, you're in serious danger.
There are people, she paused.
Things that will come looking for it.
For you.
We can protect you, but you need to come in now. How do you even know about the coin? The cafe has cameras, Miss Mara. And we monitor certain establishments. Please. We're trying to help you. The line went dead. Mara stared at her phone, then at the coin, then at the letter. Nothing made sense. Marcus wanted her to run. The detective wanted her to hide in a police station. And Aldrich, if that was even his real name, wanted to meet and explain. 3 different people, 3 different solutions, all delivered within 2 hours. She walked to her window and looked out at the city. Daylight. Normal traffic. People walking dogs. The world continuing like nothing was wrong. But on her palm, where she'd been gripping the coin, her skin had started to tingle. Not painfully. More like the residual buzz after touching something electric. She opened her hand. The symbol from the coin, the crown and thorns and crossed fangs, was now faintly visible on her skin, like a temporary tattoo.
Or a brand.
Mara's knees buckled. It wasn't a coin that marked her.
She was the mark.
And sunset was 7 hours away. Mara spent the day in a state of numb panic, scrubbing her palm until the skin turned raw. The mark didn't fade. If anything, it seemed to darken, the lines becoming more defined with each passing hour. She'd ignored 4 more calls from the detective, blocked Marcus's number after his 6th frantic text. Mr. Whiskers had hidden under the bed, sensing her terror. By 5:30 p.m., she'd made her decision. She had to meet Aldrich. Not because she trusted him, but because he was the only one who seemed willing to explain what was happening. The detective wanted to lock her away. Marcus wanted her to run. But Aldrich, he'd apologized. He'd said the mark came with a price she didn't agree to pay. That meant he knew how to remove it. Mara, dressed in jeans and her most practical boots, tied her dark hair back and slipped a kitchen knife into her jacket pocket. Useless against a vampire, probably, but it made her feel slightly less helpless. The corner of 5th and Morrison was a 20-minute walk from her apartment. She arrived 15 minutes early, positioning herself near a 24-hour convenience store where the lights were bright and people were visible. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood orange. At exactly 6:47 p.m., as the last sliver of sun vanished, Aldrich appeared. Not from around a corner. Not from a car. He was simply there, standing beneath the streetlight as if he'd materialized from the shadows themselves. He looked exactly as he had at the cafe, elegant suit, dark hair, those unsettling pale eyes. But now, seeing him in context with the letter and the mark on her hand, Mara recognized what she'd missed before. He didn't breathe. His chest never rose or fell. He didn't blink as often as he should. And when he moved toward her, his footsteps made no sound. "You came," his voice carried that same formal tone. "I wasn't certain you would. You didn't give me much choice." Mara held up her palm, showing the mark. "What did you do to me?" Pain flickered across his face, genuine pain, which surprised her. "I made a terrible mistake. May we speak somewhere more private? I have much to explain, and very little time." "I'm not going anywhere alone with you." A wise precaution, he gestured, and 2 figures emerged from the darkness behind him. Mara's hand flew to the knife in her pocket. Both figures wore long black cloaks that seemed to absorb light. Their faces were hidden by hoods, but she could feel their presence, cold and ancient and utterly inhuman. "My guards," Aldrich explained. "They mean you no harm. But what I must tell you cannot be overheard by human authorities. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Mara nodded. Aldrich led her into the alley beside the convenience store. His guards positioned themselves at both ends, blocking any exit or entrance. The move was protective and threatening in equal measure. "Show me your hand," Aldrich said quietly. Mara extended her palm. In the dim alley, the mark glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Aldrich's expression darkened. "It's already rooted. Forgive me. I should never have left that coin." "What is it?" "The royal sigil. A protection seal created by the first council 3,000 years ago." He spoke like he was reciting history he'd lived through. "It's meant to mark our allies, humans under our direct protection. But the magic is old, binding. Once given, once accepted, it creates a vow. I didn't accept anything. You left a tip. And you kept it. You carried it." That was enough for the magic to recognize consent. He ran a hand through his hair, the first ungraceful gesture she'd seen from him. "I'm ancient, Miss Mara, but even I sometimes forget how literal old magic can be. So remove it." "I can't. Not without." He stopped abruptly, his head tilting as if listening to something she couldn't hear. His guard stiffened. "Without what?" Mara demanded. Aldrich stepped closer, so close she could smell him. Old books and colder things, like winter air. "Without completing the bond. And I will not do that without your full understanding and consent. But first, you need to understand what the mark means." He reached for her hand. Mara flinched, but didn't pull away. His fingers were ice cold as they wrapped around hers. The moment his skin touched the mark, it flared brilliant gold, and Mara gasped as something burned through her. Not pain, but awareness. Like waking from a dream she didn't know she was having. Images flooded her mind. A massive underground city lit by glowing stones. Courts filled with pale-faced nobles in ancient dress. And something else. Hunger, loneliness, the weight of centuries pressing down like water. Aldrich's loneliness. She yanked her hand back, breathing hard. "What was that?" "The beginning of the bond," his voice was tight. "The mark connects us now. It means you are under my protection. the protection of the Vampire King. But it also means you're a target. Every enemy I have, every rival who wants my throne, every hunter who kills our kind. They can all sense this mark.
They know, Mara.
They all know. Know what? That I've chosen you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Chosen me for what? Mara's voice cracked. Before Aldrich could answer, one of his guards made a sharp sound. Not quite a word, more like a hiss of warning. Aldrich moved so fast he blurred. One moment he was standing before her. The next, he pulled her against his chest, his body a shield. They're here, he whispered against her hair. The hunters. They tracked the mark's activation. From both ends of the alley, figures emerged, humans carrying weapons that gleamed silver in the streetlight. And they were smiling. The hunters moved with military precision, 6 of them total, cutting off every escape route. They wore tactical gear, faces hidden behind black masks, but their weapons were anything but modern. Crossbows with silver-tipped bolts, blades that seemed to drink in the light. Aldrich Theron, the Wandering King, the lead hunter announced, his voice mockingly formal. Slumming in human territory again? And with cargo this time? Aldrich's grip on Mara tightened.
Leave. Now.
She's under the old laws. The old laws died with the first council. The hunter raised his crossbow. That mark on her hand? That's a declaration of war. You've been hiding in your underground kingdom for 50 years, and now you emerge to claim a pet? The court will eat itself alive over this insult. I claimed nothing. The mark was accidental. Accidental? The hunter laughed. The royal sigil doesn't activate by accident. You touched her. You bonded her. That makes her fair game. Everything happened at once. The hunters fired. Aldrich's guards lunged forward, their cloaks billowing like wings. Aldrich spun Mara behind him, and she heard the wet thunk of crossbow bolts hitting flesh. Except when she looked, the bolts had struck Aldrich's shoulder and chest, and he was still standing. He reached up and pulled the bolts out like splinters. The wounds closed instantly. Run, he told Mara, his voice carrying a command that vibrated in her bones. My guards will. A hunter broke through the left flank, blade flashing. Mara didn't think. She grabbed the knife from her pocket and slashed wildly. The blade caught the hunter across the forearm. He barely flinched, but it was enough distraction for one of Aldrich's guards to tackle him. She fights, another hunter observed with amusement. How delightful. Aldrich's eyes blazed silver-white. You will not touch her. The temperature in the alley plummeted. Frost spread across the brick walls, across the concrete, across the hunter's weapons. Mara's breath came out in clouds. Aldrich moved. It wasn't like the movies. No dramatic slow motion, no theatrical flourishes. He was simply faster than human eyes could track. 1 second he stood beside Mara. The next, 3 hunters were on the ground, unconscious or dead. She couldn't tell which. The remaining hunters retreated, their leader's voice tight with fury. This isn't over. The entire network knows about her now. Every hunter, every rogue clan, every political rival you have. They'll come for her, Aldrich. And you can't protect her forever. Then they were gone, vanishing into the city darkness with their fallen. Aldrich turned to Mara, his expression haunted. Are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. Her knife was still gripped in her trembling hand, and there was blood on it, human blood, which somehow made this worse. We need to leave. Now, Aldrich gestured to his guards. They'll return with reinforcements. I need to go home. I need to. You can't go home. Aldrich's voice was gentle but firm. Did you hear what he said? Every hunter network is being activated. They'll be watching your apartment, your friends, your family. Anyone you've ever known. Mara's legs gave out. She would have collapsed if Aldrich hadn't caught her, his cold hands steadying her shoulders. Breathe, he said softly. Just breathe. This can't be real. This can't. I know, he helped her sit against the alley wall, crouching before her, so they were eye level. I know this is terrifying. I know you want to wake up and have this be a nightmare. But, Mara, it's real. And I need you to understand exactly what you're facing so you can make an informed choice. What choice? Her voice sounded hollow. You said you can't remove the mark. I can't remove it simply. But there are two paths forward. He held up her marked hand, his thumb tracing the glowing sigil. The mark is a protection seal, but it's incomplete. Right now, it's broadcasting your location to anyone who knows how to sense it. You're a beacon. Then complete it. Make it stop broadcasting. Completing it requires a blood oath. My blood, willingly given and accepted. It would bind you to me as he paused, choosing words carefully. As my vassal. Under vampire law, you would be considered part of my household. My responsibility. Under my direct command. The implications hit her like ice water. You mean like property? No, his voice sharpened. Never property. But yes, you would be bound to obey my direct orders, especially in matters of safety. In exchange, no vampire in the world could harm you without facing my full wrath. The protection would be absolute. And if I refuse? Aldrich's jaw tightened. Then you remain as you are, marked but unprotected. I can hide you, guard you, but the mark will keep calling to everyone who wants to hurt me. Hunters.
Rival vampire courts.
Political enemies. They will never stop coming. Mara looked at the mark on her palm, then at Aldrich's face. Despite everything, the danger, the terror, the impossibility, she didn't see cruelty there. She saw regret.
Guilt.
And something else that looked almost like hope. Is there a third option? Death, he said quietly. If you die, the mark dies with you. I would never suggest it, but you deserve to know all possibilities. Mara laughed, a broken, slightly hysterical sound. So my choices are, become a vampire servant, spend my life running, or die. That's what your gratitude bought me. Yes, he didn't flinch from her anger. And I will spend eternity trying to make amends if you'll let me. The mark pulsed warm against her skin. Mara closed her eyes. How long do I have to decide? Minutes, Aldrich said. Not hours. The hunters will return, and next time there will be dozens. I can fight them, but not while keeping you safe. We need to move. Where? He met her eyes, and she saw centuries of loneliness there. Home, he said. My home. The place where you'll be safest while you decide whether to bind yourself to a monster. Mara didn't get to answer. Her apartment building exploded. Not literally, but close enough. From 6 blocks away, she heard the crash of breaking glass, screams, and something that sounded like thunder rolling through concrete. Aldrich's head snapped toward the sound, his expression darkening. They didn't wait. That's my building, Mara's voice came out strangled. Nicole. My roommate. She's sleeping. She works nights. She was already running before Aldrich could stop her.
Mara, no.
He caught up to her instantly, materializing in front of her. That's exactly what they want. You run toward the danger, and they. Another crash. This time, Mara saw flames licking out of a 4th-floor window. Her window. Mr. Whiskers, she whispered. Then louder, fighting against Aldrich's grip. My cat is in there. Something in Aldrich's expression shifted. He looked at his guards and gave a sharp nod. Both vanished into the darkness. They'll search for survivors, he told Mara. But you stay with me. Do you understand? They're not here for your cat or your roommate. They're here for you. As if summoning them, figures emerged from her building. Not hunters this time, but something worse. Vampires. Mara knew instantly. They moved like Aldrich moved, fluid and too fast, but where Aldrich carried centuries of refinement, these vampires were feral.
Wild.
Their eyes glowed red instead of silver, and their faces were twisted with hunger. Rogues, Aldrich hissed. The hunters must have hired them. I thought vampires couldn't hurt me because of the mark. Rogues follow no laws. They're exile vampires, cast out from all courts. To them, you're not a protected human. You're bait to draw me out. His hand found hers, gripping the marked palm. And it worked. 6 rogues circled them on the street. Late-night pedestrians scattered, screaming. Someone would call the police. This was about to become a massacre. Can you fight them all? Mara asked.
Yes.
But not while keeping you alive. One of the rogues laughed, a sound like breaking bones. The great Aldrich Theron, brought low by human weakness. The council will be so pleased to hear. Aldrich moved. One rogue turned to ash before Mara could blink. He'd ripped out its heart with his bare hand, the organ crumbling to dust. The other rogues attacked as one. Mara was thrown backward by the shockwave of their collision, hitting the sidewalk hard. Through streaming eyes, she watched Aldrich fight, and it was beautiful and terrible. He was a blur of controlled violence, each movement precise, deadly.
No guastimotion. No merci.
But there were too many. A rogue broke through his defense, coming straight for Mara. She scrambled backward, her kitchen knife useless in her shaking hand. The vampire's claws extended, aiming for her throat. Aldrich's guard appeared from nowhere, tackling the rogue mid-leap. They rolled across the pavement in a snarling mass of fangs and fury. The building, the guard shouted. More coming from inside. Mara looked up. Rogues were climbing out of her apartment window, crawling down the brick face like spiders.
Dozens of them.
They'd been hiding inside, waiting. This wasn't a spontaneous attack. This was planned. Aldrich, she screamed. He was already moving, positioning himself between her and the building. When I say run, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. My guards will follow. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. His eyes blazed with command, the same force she'd felt in the alley, but stronger. Her legs tensed, ready to obey without conscious thought. You are not dying tonight. Not for me. Not because of my mistake. The rogues poured from the building like a swarm. Mara felt the mark on her palm burn hot, then cold, then hot again. Something was building inside it. Pressure, power, something old and furious responding to her terror. Aldrich, my hand.
He looked.
His eyes widened.
No.
Not yet. You're not ready. The mark exploded with golden light. It wasn't pain, but it was overwhelming, like lightning traveling through her veins, rewriting something fundamental. Mara screamed, and the sound carried power that shouldn't have been possible from human lungs. Every rogue froze. The golden light spread from her palm, crawling up her arm, across her chest, until she was glowing like a star. The rogues hissed and retreated, shielding their eyes. Impossible, one whispered. She's fully marked. The king already completed the bond. I didn't, Aldrich said, his voice full of wonder and dread. The mark is completing itself. The light pulsed once, twice, then condensed back into Mara's palm, but now the sigil was different. Fuller. The crown had 7 points instead of 5. The thorns were blooming roses. The rogues scattered, fleeing into the night like rats from light. Aldrich caught Mara as she collapsed, her body suddenly too heavy for her legs. That's not possible, he murmured, examining her palm. The bond requires mutual blood exchange. You can't self-complete a royal mark. The magic doesn't work that way. Then what just happened? Mara's voice was barely a whisper. Aldrich's expression was unreadable, fear and fascination warring in his ancient eyes. I don't know, but we need to leave.
Now.
Before something worse comes to investigate. Worse than that. He lifted her effortlessly into his arms. Much worse. That light? Every vampire in the city just felt it. Every court, every clan, every creature that feeds in darkness. They all know exactly where you are. And they'll come? Yes, he started moving, faster than any human could run, his guards flanking them. Because what you just did, a human channeling royal vampire magic, hasn't happened in 3,000 years. What happened 3,000 years ago? Aldrich's voice was grim.
Va.
The kind that nearly destroyed both our species. Behind them, Mara's apartment building burned, and sirens wailed in the distance. She'd lost everything in one night. And somehow, she knew it was only the beginning. They descended for what felt like hours. After fleeing her burning building, Aldrich had brought Mara to an abandoned subway station, one that wasn't on any map. Behind a rusted gate marked condemned, stone stairs spiraled down into earth that smelled ancient and cold. The deeper they went, the more the air changed. It grew colder, yes, but also heavier, thick with something Mara couldn't name. Magic, maybe. Or just the weight of secrets buried for centuries. Aldrich hadn't spoken since they'd entered the tunnels. His jaw was set, his eyes distant. The two guards followed silently behind, their footsteps echoing in the impossible darkness. Mara's hand still tingled where the mark had transformed. She kept looking at it. The seven-pointed crown, the roses blooming from thorns. It no longer glowed, but she could feel it humming beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. How much farther? Her voice sounded too loud in the silence. We're here. The tunnel opened into a cavern so vast that Mara's breath caught. But it wasn't the size that stopped her heart. It was the city. Nocturnus. It sprawled before her like something from a fever dream. Buildings carved directly from living stone, their architecture a blend of Gothic spires and something older, more primal. Streets paved with dark crystal that reflected light from thousands of lanterns, except these lanterns held no fire. They glowed with soft blue-white light, cold as moonlight trapped in glass.
Moonstone, Mara realized.
The entire city was lit by moonstone. It's impossible, she whispered. It survived 5,000 years. Aldrich's voice carried pride and sadness. Built by the first council, when humans still feared the dark. We've lived beneath your cities, beneath your wars, beneath your progress. Unchanging, undying. Vampires moved through the streets below, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They wore clothes from every era imaginable. Medieval gowns walking beside Victorian suits beside modern fashion. All pale. All beautiful in that uncanny way that made Mara's human eyes ache. And they all stopped to stare as Aldrich led her down the main boulevard. The whispers started immediately. Mara didn't understand the language, something old and harsh, but she understood the tone.
Shock, disgust,
fury. They're not happy to see me, she said quietly. They're not happy to see a human in Nocturnus. It hasn't happened in over a century. Aldrich's hand found her elbow, guiding her forward. Keep your eyes forward. Don't respond to provocation. And stay close. A vampire woman in an emerald dress stepped into their path. Her face was exquisite, porcelain perfect, with eyes like frozen amber. Aldrich, you actually brought it here. Lady Seraphine, Aldrich's voice went cold. The human has a name. Use it or move. A human with a royal mark, Seraphine circled them slowly, and Mara felt like prey being assessed. A complete royal mark, if the rumors are true. Tell me, my king, when did you develop a taste for pets? She is not. Because that's what she looks like. A pet human, dressed in human rags, reeking of human fear, stumbling through our sacred capital like a lost child. Seraphine smiled, showing too many teeth. The council will be fascinated, especially when they learn you've completed a blood bond without their approval. I completed nothing. The mark activated itself. That caused a ripple of shocked murmurs through the gathered crowd. More vampires had stopped to watch, forming a loose circle around them. Marks don't activate themselves, another vampire said. A man with silver hair and scars across his neck. That's not how the old magic works. Nevertheless, Aldrich's voice carried command, silencing the crowd. Mara is under my direct protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. Is that understood? The silence that followed was hostile, but no one challenged him. Aldrich led Mara through the streets toward a massive structure at the city's center, a palace carved from black stone, its towers reaching toward the cavern's ceiling like grasping fingers. Guards flanked the entrance, their faces hidden behind silver masks. They didn't ask questions. They simply opened the gates. Inside, The palace was colder than the streets. Moonstone lanterns cast everything in sharp relief. No shadows, no warmth, just crystalline clarity that made every detail painfully visible. "This is your home?" Mara asked. "This is my prison." Aldrich gestured to the vast halls around them. "I rule Nocturnus, but I haven't left the city in 50 years. Not until 3 days ago when I needed to see the surface again. To remember what it felt like to walk among humans without fear or judgment." "You came to my cafe to feel normal." "Yes," he smiled sadly. "And instead, I destroyed your normal life. For that, I am sorrier than words can express." They climbed a grand staircase, passing portraits of pale figures in ancient dress. Former kings and queens, Mara guessed, all watching her with painted eyes full of judgment. "Where are we going?" "My private quarters." "You'll stay there until the council convenes." He paused outside an ornate door. "Mara, I need you to understand something. The council will want to question you, examine you, possibly experiment on you to understand how the mark completed itself." "Experiment? I won't let them," his voice hardened. "But they will ask, and they will push, and they will not be kind. You are an anomaly, a disruption to the order that's kept our society stable for millennia. So, I'm not just a target. I'm also a problem." "You're a miracle," Aldrich said quietly. "Or a catastrophe. History hasn't decided yet." He opened the door, revealing a suite of rooms that looked like they belonged in a Renaissance palace. High ceilings, tapestries, furniture that was clearly centuries old but perfectly preserved.
Rest.
"Eat if you're hungry. There's human food in the side chamber. I had it brought up when the mark first activated, hoping I'd have the chance to bring you here." He moved toward the door. "I'll return in a few hours to prepare you for." "Don't leave," Mara's voice cracked.
"Please."
"I can't be alone here. I can't." Aldrich hesitated, centuries of protocol warring with something else in his expression. Finally, he nodded. "I'll stay. As long as you need." For the first time since the cafe, Mara felt something other than terror. She felt the smallest fragment of hope. The council convened at midnight. Mara stood in what Aldrich called the Hall of Judgment, a circular chamber with walls of polished obsidian that reflected her terrified face 1,000 times. 12 thrones carved from different kinds of stone ringed the room, each occupied by a vampire who looked at her like she was a stain on their perfect world. Aldrich stood beside her, dressed now in formal regalia, a long coat of midnight blue with silver threading, his hair pulled back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. He looked every inch a king, untouchable, ancient. And yet, his hand hovered near hers, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his skin. "This council is convened," announced a vampire woman seated on a throne of white marble. She wore robes of deep crimson, her white hair braided with what looked like bone. "Aldrich Theron, you stand accused of violating the Treaty of Silent Coexistence by marking a human without council approval." "I marked no one intentionally." High Counselor Vivian Aldrich's voice was steady. "The coin was meant as a simple gift. The magic activated without my direct intent." "Convenient." This from a male vampire on a throne of iron, his face scarred and cruel. "The king claims ignorance of his own power. Shall we believe that?" "It's the truth, Counselor Kane." "Then explain the complete mark." Kane gestured sharply at Mara. "Bring the human forward." Mara's feet wouldn't move. Aldrich's hand finally made contact with her elbow, steadying her. Together, they approached the center of the circle. "Show them," Aldrich said softly. Mara held up her palm. The mark blazed to life under the council's scrutiny, 7-pointed crown, roses blooming from thorns, all glowing with golden light. The chamber erupted. "Impossible," someone shouted. "The rose seal. That's the rose seal. It hasn't appeared in 3,000 years." Vivian raised one hand, and silence crashed down like a physical weight. "Explain."
"Now."
"I don't know how it happened." Aldrich's composure was fracturing. "The mark activated during a rogue attack. The human was in danger, and the seal
"Evolved."
completed itself. I performed no blood ritual. No oath was spoken. And yet the rose blooms. Vivian descended from her throne, approaching Mara with predatory grace. May I? Before Mara could answer, Vivian grabbed her wrist. Her touch was ice that burned, and Mara gasped as the High Counselor's eyes went white, reading something in the mark that Mara couldn't see. When Vivian released her, the vampire looked shaken. It's genuine, she said quietly. Not forged. Not corrupted. The rose seal has chosen her. What does that mean? Mara found her voice, though it trembled. What's the rose seal? It means, Cain said coldly, that you're not just marked. You're chosen. As in chosen to stand beside the vampire king as his. Enough, Aldrich's voice cracked like thunder. She understands nothing of our politics. You will not burden her with. With what? The truth. Cain stood, his expression vicious. The rose seal is the ancient bond, Aldrich. The one that creates a consort. Not a servant. Not a vassal. A true equal in power, recognized by the old magic itself. You've bound yourself to a human at the highest level possible. Mara's world tilted. Consort? Like a queen? Like the king's chosen partner, Vivian said, her tone clinical. Bound by blood and magic. Sharing power, sharing rule, sharing. She's a liability. Another counselor stood, a woman with eyes like black opals. A human consort? It's an abomination. Our enemies will see this as weakness. The other vampire nations will mock us. The hunters will intensify their attacks, seeing this as proof that our king has gone mad. I agree, Cain's smile was sharp. Aldrich Theron has ruled for 800 years, but clearly, those centuries have made him sentimental.
Soft.
He risks our entire civilization for one human girl. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council. Aldrich's jaw clenched. I risk nothing. The seal activated on its own. That means the old magic itself deemed her worthy. Or the old magic is broken, Cain interrupted, which is why I call for vote. Either Aldrich removes the seal. It can't be removed. Not the rose seal. Or he steps down as king and we elect new leadership. Leadership that prioritizes vampire survival over human pets. The chamber exploded in argument. Some counselors shouted support for Cain. Others defended Aldrich. Still others called for Mara's immediate execution, claiming it would dissolve the seal. Mara stood frozen in the center of the chaos, the mark burning on her palm. This couldn't be real. She wasn't anyone special. She was a waitress. A nobody. And now these ancient creatures were discussing her like she was a political crisis. Silence. Vivian's voice cut through the noise. This decision is too important for hasty judgment. We will recess and reconvene in 3 days. Until then, the human remains under the king's protection. Anyone who harms her will face execution. Is that understood? Reluctant nods around the circle. And Aldrich, Vivian's eyes were hard. You will teach her our ways, our laws, our history. If the rose seal has truly chosen her, she must prove herself worthy of it. Because if she fails, if she demonstrates that the old magic has indeed gone mad, the council will have no choice but to intervene. Meaning will remove the problem at its source. Vivian looked directly at Mara. One way or another. The council dismissed, the vampires filing out in tense silence. Cain paused near Aldrich, his voice too low for others to hear, but perfectly clear to Mara's ears. You've sealed your own destruction, old friend. When the other nations hear of this, they'll come. And not even your power can stand against 6 vampire kingdoms united against a human-loving fool. He vanished into the shadows. Mara turned to Aldrich. They're going to kill me. No, his voice was steel. I am Vampire King. My word is absolute within these walls. But outside these walls. Aldrich's silence was answer enough. Mara looked at the mark on her palm, the roses that had somehow chosen her, condemned her, elevated her all at once. 3 days, she whispered. You have 3 days to teach me how to survive in a world that wants me dead. Aldrich met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw fear in them. Then we begin now. The training began before dawn, or what would have been dawn in the world above. In Nocturnus, time was measured differently. The moonstone lanterns dimmed and brightened in 12-hour cycles, simulating day and night for a city that never saw the sun. Aldrich led Mara to a private library deep within the palace, a room lined floor-to-ceiling with books so old they looked like they might crumble at a touch. A large table dominated the center, covered with scrolls, maps, and what looked like family trees drawn in silver ink. Lesson 1, Aldrich said, spreading out a map of Nocturnus. Know where you are and how to escape. This city has 17 secret exits. Memorize them. Mara's head was still spinning from the council meeting. Shouldn't we be talking about the rose seal? About what being ace consort means? We will. But first, you need to survive long enough for it to matter. His finger traced paths on the map. The council gave us 3 days. Others won't be so patient. There are vampires in this city, in my own court, who see you as an opportunity. Kill the human, destabilize the king, seize power. That's comforting. It's reality. Aldrich looked up, his pale eyes serious. I need you to understand something, Mara. I cannot protect you every moment. I have duties, responsibilities, appearances I must maintain to keep the council from open rebellion, which means you need to learn to protect yourself. I'm human. How am I supposed to fight vampires? You're not. You're supposed to avoid them. He pulled out another scroll, this one covered in symbols. Which brings us to lesson 2, vampire clan sigils. Every vampire belongs to a bloodline, and every bloodline has a crest. You need to recognize them on sight. For the next hour, Aldrich walked her through dozens of symbols. The Thornheart clan, warriors loyal to the throne. The Night Whisper clan, scholars and record keepers. The Bloodworth clan, merchants who controlled trade between Nocturnus and other vampire cities. And dozens more, each with their own histories, allegiances, and grudges. The ones you need to watch for are the Shadowfen clan. Aldrich pointed to a sigil that looked like a broken chain. They're Cain's bloodline. They've wanted the throne for centuries. If anyone moves against you openly, it'll be them. Mara's head ached trying to remember everything. This is impossible. I can't learn all this in 3 days. You'll learn what you need to survive. The rest can come later. He moved to another table, this one holding strange objects, coins, rings, pendants. Lesson 3, vampire etiquette and insults. In our world, everything is symbolic. Giving the wrong gift or using the wrong form of address can mean the difference between an ally and an enemy. He held up a silver ring. If someone offers you silver jewelry, refuse it. Silver burns vampires. Offering it to someone under vampire protection is an insult, a threat. What if they offer gold? Gold is neutral. Safe. He set down the ring and picked up a vial of dark liquid. If someone offers you wine, smell it first. If it smells like copper, it's blood.
Yes.
Drinking offered blood creates a minor blood bond. Not permanent, but it gives the offerer influence over you for several hours. Never accept drink from anyone but me or my personal guards. The lessons continued relentlessly. How to read vampire body language. The tilt of a head could mean respect or mockery, depending on context. How to identify vampire age by the coldness of their skin and the color of their eyes. How to recognize when a vampire was feeding. The flush in their cheeks, the slight warmth, the way their movements became more fluid. And the mark. Mara finally asked, holding up her palm. How do I use it? At my apartment it did something. Scared off the rogues. Aldrich's expression darkened. That shouldn't have happened. The rose seal grants protection and recognition, but it shouldn't have active power. Not without, he stopped himself. Without what? Without my blood in your veins. Without the bond being fully realized, he turned away, pacing. Which means the seal is adapting to you somehow. responding to your emotions, your fear.
That's
Unprecedented. Is that bad? I don't know, he faced her again. The rose seal was created 3,000 years ago by the first council. Only 3 humans in history have ever received it. The last was a warrior queen named Alara who stood beside King Mordain during the Great War. The records say she could channel vampire power through the seal, that she became nearly as strong as the king himself. What happened to her? She died fighting beside him when the war ended. The seal died with her, and Mordain. Aldrich's voice softened. Mordain went into the long sleep. The grief sleep that some vampires never wake from. The weight of that history pressed down on Mara. So, if I die, I don't know what would happen to me. The rose seal creates a true bond. Not ownership. Not servitude. Partnership. He moved closer, his voice dropping. Which is why the council is terrified. They can't control you through me, and they can't control me while you exist. You're a variable in a society that hasn't seen change in millennia. I never asked for this. I know, genuine pain crossed his face. If I could undo that night at the cafe. Would you? Mara surprised herself with the question. Knowing everything that's happened, would you actually undo it? Aldrich studied her for a long moment. Ask me again in 3 days. A knock at the library door interrupted them. One of Aldrich's guards entered, bowing low. My king. Lady Seraphine requests an audience with the human. She claims it's regarding the council's evaluation. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Tell her. I'll see her, Mara said. Absolutely not. Seraphine is dangerous. I can't hide from everyone. You said I need to learn to survive here. Mara straightened her shoulders, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Lesson 4. Face the vipers in their den, right? Something like pride flickered in Aldrich's eyes. You're braver than you think. Or stupider. Sometimes those are the same thing, he gestured to the guard. Bring Lady Seraphine here.
But you stay.
The human is not to be left alone with her. The guard bowed and departed. Mara looked down at her marked palm, at the roses that had chosen her for reasons she still didn't understand. 3 days to prove she deserved to live. The clock was ticking. Lady Seraphine's visit had been brief and venomous, thinly veiled threats wrapped in courtly politeness. But Mara had survived it, remembering Aldrich's lessons about vampire etiquette, refusing the silver bracelet Seraphine had offered as a gift of welcome. The days blurred together after that. Training sessions, history lessons, memorizing clan sigils until she saw them in her sleep. But as the 3rd day approached, something shifted between Mara and Aldrich. It started small. On the 2nd night, Aldrich brought her to the palace gardens, a vast underground courtyard where impossible things grew. Trees with silver leaves that chimed like bells in the artificial wind. Flowers that glowed soft blue, their petals cold to the touch. A reflecting pool that showed not their reflections, but the night sky above ground. Stars twinkling thousands of feet overhead.
How?
Mara breathed, staring up at the impossible stars. Magic older than language, Aldrich stood beside her at the pool's edge. The first council created this place as a reminder of what we'd lost when we fled underground. The sun would kill us, but we could keep the stars. Mara looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since that night at the cafe. Without the terror and chaos, she could see past the predator to the person beneath. The loneliness in his eyes. The way his shoulders carried centuries of weight. Do you miss it? She asked quietly. The surface world. Every night his voice was raw. I'm 800 years old, Mara. I've watched empires rise and fall. I've seen humanity invent wonders and horrors in equal measure. And for 50 years, I've been trapped down here, ruling a city that resents me, surrounded by vampires who see me as either a tyrant or a fool. Why did you stop going up? The last time I walked among humans, I fell in love with one, he said it simply, without drama. A doctor. She didn't know what I was. For 6 months, I pretended to be human. I watched her save lives, watched her fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. And then vampire hunters found out. They killed her thinking she was my accomplice. Burned her clinic with her inside. Mara's chest tightened. Aldrich. I slaughtered them all. Every hunter in that city. Then I returned here and swore I'd never risk a human life again. He finally looked at her. I broke that oath the moment I left you that coin. You didn't know what would happen. I should have. I'm ancient, Mara. There's no excuse for my carelessness. He turned back to the star pool. But I can't bring myself to regret it entirely. Does that make me monstrous? It makes you honest. They stood in silence, watching the false stars shimmer. Then Mara reached out and took his hand, the first time she'd voluntarily touched him. His skin was ice cold, but she didn't let go. Tell me something, she said. Something real. Not about vampire politics or clan wars or magic seals. Something about you. Aldrich's fingers tightened around hers. I was human once. Did you know that? All vampires were, in the beginning. I don't remember much. The transformation burns away most human memories. But I remember music. My mother singing while she worked. I've spent 8 centuries trying to remember the melody, and I can't. That's heartbreaking. That's immortality. You keep existing, but you lose pieces of yourself. Little deaths spread across endless time. He glanced at their joined hands. You're warm. I'd forgotten how warm humans are. You're freezing. I never realized how cold dead things are. I'm not dead.
Just.
Changed, he smiled slightly. Is that your polite way of calling me a corpse? Is that your polite way of calling me fragile? Something sparked between them. Not quite humor, but close. The tension that had existed since the cafe shifted, becoming something else. Something neither of them had names for yet. Over the next day, Aldrich showed her more of Nocturnus, the Hall of Memories, where vampires could revisit their human lives through blood magic. The Eternal Market, where creatures Mara had no names for traded in languages that hurt to hear. The Crimson Archive, holding books written in blood on pages of preserved skin. But it was the quiet moments Mara treasured most. Aldrich teaching her chess in the library, his ancient strategies no match for her unpredictable human illogic. Walking through the moonstone-lit streets after the crowds had thinned, Aldrich pointing out architectural details from civilizations long forgotten above ground. And talking. Endless talking. Mara told him about her life, the small, mundane details she'd never thought would interest a vampire king. Her father, who'd left when she was 7. Her mother, who'd worked 3 jobs and still found time to read her bedtime stories. The scholarship she'd lost after her mom got sick. The dreams she deferred to pay medical bills. Aldrich listened like every word mattered. Like her small human life was as epic as any century he'd lived. You're remarkable, he said one evening as they sat in his private study. You've faced impossibility with such grace. Grace? I've been terrified every second since the cafe. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. He set down his wine glass. Actual wine, not blood. He'd been drinking it during their evenings together, though she knew it did nothing for him. A gesture of solidarity. The council reconvenes tomorrow. The words landed like stones. Mara had been trying not to think about it. What do you think they'll decide? Honestly? I don't know. Kane has been quiet, too quiet. That worries me more than open opposition. Aldrich reached across the table, his cold fingers brushing her marked palm. But whatever they decide, whatever happens, I want you to know something. What? These 3 days with you have been, he struggled for words. I haven't felt this alive in 50 years. Longer. You've reminded me why I used to love the surface world. Why I used to believe humans and vampires could coexist. Mara's heart hammered. Aldrich. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. The rose seal may bind us, but your feelings are your own. I just needed you to know. Before tomorrow. Before everything changes again. The mark on Mara's palm pulsed warm, the first time it had felt warm instead of burning. Like it approved. Like it knew something they didn't yet. What if I don't want to just be bound by magic? The words escaped before Mara could stop them. What if I want to choose this? Choose you. Aldrich's eyes widened, silver flaring bright. Mara. A bell tolled through Nocturnus, deep, resonant, impossible to ignore. The council was convening early. And from the sound of that bell, something had gone terribly wrong. The Hall of Judgment was packed. Not just the 12 council members, but dozens of vampires crowding the chamber, clan leaders, nobles, warriors. The air crackled with tension so thick it felt solid. Aldrich's hand gripped Mara's elbow as they entered. Stay close. Something's wrong. Cain stood at the center of the circle, his expression triumphant. Beside him stood 3 vampires Mara didn't recognize, ancient creatures whose eyes glowed red instead of silver, their power radiating like heat from a furnace. Aldrich Theron. Cain's voice rang out. You're late to your own trial. This session wasn't scheduled until sunset. Aldrich's voice was ice. What is the meaning of this? The meaning, said one of the red-eyed vampires, is that your reign ends tonight. Vivian stood from her throne, her face pale even by vampire standards. King Aldrich, these are representatives from the Eastern courts. They've come with accusations. The red-eyed vampire stepped forward. His accent was thick, ancient. I am Constantine of the Bloodied Crown. We have received word that you've bound a human using the Rose Seal, a seal that requires council approval from all 6 vampire nations, not just your own pitiful court. The seal activated on its own. Lies. Constantine's smile was vicious. We have testimony from your own council members that you've been unstable for decades.
Weak.
Sentimental. This human is proof that you're unfit to rule. Mara's blood ran cold. Testimony from who? Cain's smile answered the question. You conspired with foreign courts? Aldrich's voice dropped to something lethal. That's treason, Cain. That's survival. Cain gestured to the gathered vampires. Look around you, Aldrich. Half this court agrees with me. You've ruled for 8 centuries, but times change. We need strength, not a king who wastes his power protecting human pets. The crowd murmured agreement. Not all of them. Mara saw some vampires looking uncomfortable, uncertain, but too many nodded along. The Eastern courts propose a solution, Constantine continued. Dissolve the Rose Seal, exile the human, and step down peacefully, allowing the council to elect new leadership. Do this, and you may retire to whatever hole you wish. Refuse. Refuse, another red-eyed vampire finished, and we'll remove you by force. Along with your human. Aldrich's laugh was sharp and dangerous. You think you can force a vampire king from his throne? In his own city. We think you're outnumbered, Cain gestured, and vampires throughout the chamber dropped their courtly facades. Warriors in dark armor, carrying silver weapons. At least 50 of them, all loyal to Cain. We also think you won't risk the human's life in a fight you can't win. He was right. Mara felt Aldrich's body tense beside her, saw the calculation in his eyes. He could fight, probably kill Constantine and Cain both, but not before someone reached Mara. Not before she became collateral damage. This is madness, Vivian said, her voice shaking. You're inviting civil war. We're preventing it, Cain interrupted, by removing the source of weakness before it metastasizes. The human dies. Tonight. Council decision or not. Mara's mark flared hot. She looked down and saw it glowing bright gold, pulsing in time with her racing heart. You won't touch her. Aldrich moved in front of Mara, his power flooding the chamber. The temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the obsidian walls. Some vampires stepped back, fear flickering across their faces. But Cain held his ground. What will you do, Aldrich? Kill us all? Slaughter half your court and 3 foreign dignitaries? That would unite every vampire nation against Nocturnus. You'd doom your entire city to save one human. Yes, Aldrich's voice was absolute. I would. The chamber went silent. Mara stared at his back, at the rigid line of his shoulders. He meant it. He would actually sacrifice everything, his throne, his city, his people, for her. The realization hit like lightning. No, Mara stepped out from behind him. No, you won't. Mara, get back. They're right. She faced the crowd, her marked hand raised so everyone could see it glowing. Not about you being weak. You're the strongest person I've ever met. But they're right that I'm the problem. So, here's a better solution. She turned to Constantine. You want proof that the rose seal chose me? That I'm not just some random human Aldrich got attached to? Then test me. Mara, no. Aldrich grabbed her arm. She pulled free, meeting his eyes. You've spent 3 days teaching me to survive in this world. Let me prove I learned something. They'll kill you.
Maybe.
Or maybe the seal will protect me, like it did against the rogues. She looked back at Constantine. One test. Whatever you want. If I fail, I'll leave willingly. No rose seal, no bond, no threat to your precious stability. But if I survive, if the old magic proves I was chosen, you accept it. All of you. No more coups. No more conspiracies. Cain laughed. The human thinks she can negotiate? The human, Mara said coldly, remembering Aldrich's lessons about vampire pride, is offering you a bloodless solution to your crisis. Unless you're afraid of what one fragile human might prove. The insult landed. Cain's smile vanished. Constantine studied her with interest. What kind of test? A trial by ordeal, Cain said quickly, sensing opportunity. The old way. Lock her in the blood garden for 1 hour at midnight. No weapons. No help. If she survives, the old magic truly chose her. If she dies, he shrugged. Problem solved. Mara's mouth went dry. What's the blood garden? Aldrich's face was ashen. It's a death sentence. Nothing survives the blood garden. Not humans. Sometimes not even vampires. Perfect, Constantine smiled. We have terms. The human faces the blood garden at midnight. 3 hours from now. Aldrich, you'll watch but not interfere. If you break that oath, we'll consider it forfeit and kill her immediately. I won't agree to this. I will. Mara's voice didn't shake. I agree to the test. The mark on her palm blazed so bright that vampires shielded their eyes. And for just a moment, Mara felt something else flowing through it. Not fear, but power. Ancient, vast, and utterly certain. The rose seal had chosen her. Now she just had to survive long enough to understand why. The blood garden lay at the deepest level of Nocturnus, behind doors that hadn't been opened in centuries. The vampires had to break the seals, ancient symbols carved in stone that crumbled to dust at Constantine's touch. Mara stood at the threshold, staring into absolute darkness. The air that flowed out smelled of copper and earth and something else. Something that made her hindbrain scream run. Last chance to reconsider, Cain said, his voice falsely sympathetic. No one will think less of you for choosing life. They'll think less of her for choosing cowardice, Aldrich said sharply. He stood as close as the terms allowed, his hands clenched into fists. Mara, please. There has to be another way. There isn't, she turned to face him, and her heart cracked at the anguish in his eyes. You know there isn't. This coup won't be the last. As long as I exist, your throne will never be secure. I don't care about the throne. Yes, you do. And you should, she reached up, touching his cold cheek. You're a good king, Aldrich. Even if you don't believe it. This city needs you. Your people need you. I need you. The words came out broken. In 3 days you've become. I can't lose you. Not like this. Then have faith in your own magic, she held up her marked palm. The rose seal chose me. Maybe it knows something we don't. Or maybe it's just old magic, indiscriminate and cruel. Only one way to find out. Mara tried to smile.
Failed.
1 hour. I can survive anything for 1 hour. Constantine's voice echoed through the chamber. Midnight approaches. Human, enter the garden. Your trial begins now. Mara took a breath, possibly her last, and stepped into the darkness. The doors slammed shut behind her. For a moment, nothing. Just absolute black and the sound of her own thundering heartbeat. Then the moonstone lanterns embedded in the walls flickered to life, revealing the blood garden in all its horror. It wasn't a garden. It was an arena. Skeletal remains littered the ground, human and vampire both, their bones scattered like seeds. The walls were carved with names, thousands of them, a memorial to everyone who died here. And in the center, something moved. Mara froze. The creature was massive, easily 12 feet tall, with too many limbs and a mouth that split its torso like a wound. Its skin was translucent, showing the blood vessels beneath, except they pulsed with black liquid instead of red. A blood wraith. She'd read about them in Aldrich's books. Ancient vampire magic gone wrong, creatures that fed on life itself. It turned toward her, and Mara saw that it had no eyes. Just empty sockets that somehow still saw.
She ran.
The wraith lunged with impossible speed. Mara dove sideways, hitting the ground hard, rolling through bones that clattered like wind chimes. The creature's claws gouged stone where she'd been standing. 1 hour. Survive 1 hour.
But how?
She had no weapons. No way to hurt something that was already dead. The wraith circled her, patient, knowing she had nowhere to go. Mara's hand burned. The rose seal was glowing, casting golden light across the arena. The wraith hissed, recoiling slightly from the radiance. You don't like that? Mara held up her palm, advancing. The wraith retreated.
Good.
Because I'm just getting started. She had no idea what she was doing. But the mark was warm, alive, responding to her desperation. She remembered how it had activated during the rogue attack, fueled by fear and the need to protect herself. Protect me now, she thought fiercely. The mark pulsed. Power flooded through her. Aldrich's power, ancient and cold, channeling through the seal. Her vision sharpened. She could suddenly see in the darkness, could sense the wraith's movements before it made them. The creature lunged again. This time, Mara was ready. She sidestepped with speed that shouldn't have been possible, feeling the wind of its claws pass inches from her face. Come on, she whispered. I'm still alive. Still standing. The wraith screamed, a sound like tearing metal. It attacked with abandon now, frustrated, hungry. Mara dodged and weaved, the rose seal burning brighter with each near miss. She wasn't just surviving. She was learning. Each movement became easier, more natural. The power flowing through the mark wasn't controlling her. It was augmenting her, making her faster, stronger, more aware. Partnership, Aldrich had said.
Not ownership.
The mark was giving her exactly what she needed, the strength to stand on her own. 10 minutes passed.
20.
The wraith was tiring, or whatever passed for tired in an undead creature. Mara's body was screaming, her lungs burning, but she was still alive. 45 minutes. Almost there. The wraith made one final desperate attack, throwing itself at her with all its remaining strength. Mara planted her feet and raised her marked hand.
No.
The word carried power. Power from the seal, from Aldrich's blood magic, from the ancient covenant of the rose. Golden light exploded from her palm, and the wraith stopped, frozen mid-lunge. For one impossible moment, Mara held a blood wraith immobile through sheer force of will. Then it collapsed to dust. Silence filled the arena. The rose seal's glow faded to a soft pulse. Mara stared at her hand, then at the pile of ash that had been the wraith. Holy shit, she whispered. I actually did it. The doors burst open. Aldrich rushed in, followed by Constantine, Cain, and what looked like half of Nocturnus. The crowd stared at her, then at the wraith's remains.
Impossible, qu'un breted.
Nothing kills a blood wraith except another vampire of ancient bloodline. Or someone chosen by one, Constantine interrupted. His expression was unreadable. The rose seal didn't just protect her. It channeled the king's power through her, made her equal. Vivian descended into the arena, her eyes wide with awe. Do you understand what this means? The old magic doesn't just recognize her. It's transformed her. She's not human anymore. Not vampire. Something between. Something new. Aldrich reached Mara, pulling her into his arms. You're insane. Brilliant and insane. I'm alive, she corrected, her voice muffled against his chest. That's all that matters. Constantine approached slowly. He dropped to one knee, an ancient gesture of respect. I was wrong. The Rose Seal chose wisely. I withdraw all accusations against King Aldrich and his consort. One by one, the vampires in attendance knelt. Even Cain, his face twisted with defeat. Only Vivian remained standing. She looked at Mara with something between fear and hope. Welcome to immortal politics, Mara the Rose, she said quietly. You've just proven yourself worthy of standing beside a king. Now comes the harder part. What's that? Learning to rule beside one. 3 weeks had passed since the Blood Garden. Mara stood in what used to be the Hall of Judgment, now being renovated into something less intimidating. The obsidian walls were being inlaid with moonstone, creating patterns that reflected light instead of absorbing it. Her idea. Her first official act as whatever she was now. Human ambassador was the title they'd settled on, though everyone knew it meant more. You're frowning. Aldrich appeared beside her, silent as always. Having regrets. Just wondering if I'm doing this right. Mara gestured to the construction. Changing centuries of tradition in 3 weeks seems aggressive. You killed a blood wraith with borrowed power and survived a coup. Aggressive is your baseline now, he smiled, a real smile, the kind that made him look younger than his 8 centuries. Besides, the council approved every change. Mostly. Cain voted against all of them. Cain votes against everything I propose on principle. He'll come around. Or he won't. Either way, he's outnumbered now. That was true. After the Blood Garden, the political landscape had shifted dramatically. Vampires who'd stayed neutral before now openly supported Aldrich. The Eastern courts had sent formal apologies and gifts, including Constantine himself, who'd requested permission to stay in Nocturnus as a diplomatic observer. Spying, you mean? Mara had said when Aldrich told her. Spying with permission, Aldrich had corrected, which is called diplomacy. Now, watching the workers transform the hall, Mara felt the weight of what she'd agreed to. The Rose Seal had saved her life, but it had also bound her to a world she barely understood. Aldrich, she said quietly. That night in the garden, when the mark activated, I felt your power, your memories, your loneliness. She turned to face him. The Rose Seal doesn't just connect us. It's making me like you, changing me. I know his expression was guarded. The old texts say that over time, a rose consort takes on vampiric traits. Enhanced strength, slowed aging. Eventually he trailed off. Eventually what? Eventually, the choice to complete the transformation. To become fully vampire, he took her hand, his thumb tracing the Rose Seal. But that's decades away. Maybe longer. And it would be your choice, Mara. Always your choice. What if I don't want to become a vampire? Then you won't. The Rose Seal enhances, but it doesn't force transformation. You could live a normal human lifespan, just augmented, stronger, protected. His voice softened. But you'd age, grow old.
Eventuality.
And I would continue. The unspoken pain in those words made Mara's chest ache. You've thought about this. Every moment since the Blood Garden, he pulled her closer. I'm trying not to be selfish. Trying to give you the freedom to choose your own path. But the truth is, I want you to stay. Forever. And that makes me exactly the kind of monster you should run from. You're not a monster. Mara reached up, cupping his cold face. You're just someone who's been alone too long. And you're someone who deserves better than an immortal king with centuries of baggage. Maybe. Or maybe I deserve exactly this. She kissed him, brief, gentle, a promise more than a declaration. I'm not saying I'll become a vampire. I'm not even sure what I want yet. But I am saying I choose to stay. To see where this goes. The Rose Seal flared warm between them, responding to the decision. For how long? Aldrich whispered against her lips. As long as it feels right. Could be years. Could be decades. Could be forever, she smiled. I'm 26 years old, Aldrich. I'm allowed to not have my entire future planned out. He laughed, surprised and relieved. That's fair. A diplomatic cough interrupted them. Vivian stood at the hall's entrance, looking amused. Forgive the intrusion, but the human delegation has arrived. They're waiting in the council chamber. Human delegation? Mara pulled back from Aldrich. Your idea, Vivian reminded her. Opening diplomatic channels between Nocturnus and the surface world. Creating an official bridge between species. Mara had proposed it a week ago, a bold, possibly insane plan to end centuries of hiding. Vampires and humans working together. Trading knowledge, resources, protection. It would take decades to implement fully, but they had to start somewhere.
Right. Yes.
The delegation. Mara straightened her clothes. Human clothes, not the elaborate vampire court dress some had suggested she wear. How do I look? Terrified, Aldrich said honestly. But determined. It's a good combination. Come with me? Always. They walked together through Nocturnus's transformed streets. The city was changing, slowly, but noticeably. More moonstone lanterns, casting warmth instead of cold light. Gardens being planted with surface flowers that Mara had requested. Even the vampires seemed different, less hostile, more curious. Especially the younger ones, who'd never seen a human treated as an equal. The council chamber had been redesigned too. Instead of thrones arranged in a circle of judgment, there were now tables and chairs, a space for discussion, not declarations. 6 humans sat waiting, representatives from various governments who'd been secretly informed about Nocturnus's existence. They looked terrified but fascinated, their eyes darting between the vampire guards and the impossible underground city visible through the chamber's windows. Thank you for coming, Mara said, sitting across from them. Aldrich stood behind her chair, present, but letting her lead. I know this is overwhelming. 3 weeks ago, I was a waitress who thought vampires were myths. Now I'm here, asking you to believe in the impossible and trust that we can build something better. The lead diplomat, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, smiled slightly. You're the human who survived the blood garden, who bears the rose seal. Trust me, we've been briefed. You're either the bravest person alive or the craziest. Can't I be both? That got a few nervous laughs. Here's what I'm proposing, Mara continued. A treaty. Vampires provide protection, knowledge, resources. Humans provide humanity, perspective, a connection to the changing world above. We start small, cultural exchange, shared research, mutual defense agreements against common threats. And in exchange?
Dr. Chen asked.
Vampires stop hiding. Humans stop hunting. We try something revolutionary. Mara glanced back at Aldrich, who nodded encouragingly. We try coexistence. The negotiations lasted hours. There were arguments, concerns, moments where Mara thought the whole thing would collapse. But slowly, carefully, they built a framework. The Nocturnus Accords, they called it. A living document that would evolve as both species learned to trust each other. When the humans finally left, escorted safely back to the surface, Mara collapsed in her chair. I think that went well, she said weakly. You created the first vampire-human treaty in 3,000 years. Aldrich knelt beside her chair. I'd say it went better than well. It's just the beginning. It'll take years to implement. Decades to normalize. Good thing we have time. Mara looked at him, really looked at him. The vampire king who'd accidentally marked her, who'd taught her to survive in his world, who'd stood beside her through coup attempts and blood trials, who looked at her like she was more precious than his 8 centuries of existence. Ask me again, she said softly. Ask you what? If you'd undo that night at the cafe. Knowing everything that happened, Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her marked hand in his, pressing it against his chest where a heart no longer beat. No, he said finally. I wouldn't change a single moment, even knowing the pain it caused you, even knowing the danger. Because these 3 weeks with you have been worth centuries of loneliness. Good answer. Mara stood, pulling him up with her. Come on. We have work to do. More negotiations?
No.
I promised I'd teach Constantine how to make coffee, and Vivian wants to know about human music, she smiled. Small steps toward coexistence, remember? They walked out together, hand in hand, human and vampire, mortal and immortal, bound by ancient magic and something far simpler, choice. The mark on Mara's palm glowed softly, not with power or warning, but with contentment. It had chosen wisely. And for the first time since that night at the Blood Oath Cafe, Mara believed it. The future was uncertain. The challenges ahead were enormous, but they would face them together. As equals. As partners. As whatever they chose to become.